Hey guys, Joe here with ECRM, and I have with me Leen Nsouli from the NPD group. Leen, thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Happy to be here, Joe. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk about how this whole coronavirus pandemic is impacting the school and office supplies category. But before we jump into that, how are you doing in self-isolation? What are you doing to keep yourself busy?
I am doing well. I'm coping well. I've started to do some arts and crafts myself. So I have a project I'm working on. I might have to get some new supplies for it pretty soon. I do yoga every morning from about 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. I found a studio that's offering virtual classes. So that's been good. It keeps me, balanced and, just trying to keep in touch with everybody, family, friends, make sure everyone's all right. What about you?
Well, pretty much the same. I mean, the thing is, because I've worked from home when I'm not working from my suitcase for the past 6 years, I'm kind of used to that. So I have my routines down and everything. So my routine didn't change. The only thing I had to do was bump my routine an hour earlier because the marketing team started doing 8 o'clock in the morning meetings. So, now I'm getting up at 5 or 5:30 and, doing my workout and all that stuff before I get started. Plus, I usually post something first thing in the morning. But other than that, to be honest, I'm kind of enjoying the isolation a little bit because it's, I do have an introverted side. As much as I like being out there, I love to read. I love to, just kind of enjoy the stillness. And this has really given me the opportunity. It's also really forced us, just as a company, to innovate. And just content-wise, us doing this is something new, but it's opening up a whole bunch of possibilities. So, for me, it's just I'm kind of embracing it, and it's so busy, but I'm kind of enjoying it outside of all the COVID-19 crap that's going on here in the Petri dish of New York.
I miss the travels so much. I mean, that was a big part of my day-to-day before. And like you, I worked from home outside of the travel. So that part wasn't hard for me, but seeing you doing this, I think this is great. It's just another innovative way to kind of bring the insights, bring what we're doing, since we can't be there in person anymore, to do it in a different way. So I'm really glad that this is happening.
Yes, me too. Well, hopefully this will be cleared up by our school and office supplies, but at the rate it's going, I don't think they're going to let anybody travel until it's done at every state. And some states are still just starting to see the growth.
Yep.
So who knows? I mean, we've done some things to kind of address this. We've launched a new virtual program called Efficient Supplier Introductions, where we're using the same process, and we're getting about up to 20 buyers on a live interactive meeting, and we'll get 10 suppliers, and each supplier has 10 minutes to present, and they're very, very category specific. Sometimes they're like even subcategory level because relevance is key. So within 2 hours, the buyers get exposed to 10 new brands, and a lot of them are in these categories that are important. First, the essentials, the first wave of essentials, and now, what we're looking at as the next wave of essentials. And this is a kind of a good segue into the category where, now people are looking for those things to kind of help them make it through this isolation with a sense of normalcy, a feeling of normalcy. Kind of like what you mentioned, you're a case study in it, arts and crafts, toys. And, obviously you have all these people working from home for the first time. You have students learning from home for the first time. So all of this has got to be impacting the school and office supplies category. So I guess to start, can you give a high-level overview of what's going on?
Absolutely. So it's been a very interesting and insight-filled few weeks. So high level, office supplies, traditionally we know the bulk of the share of sales that happen for the industry, we're being impacted in a different way. So the bulk of our sales are actually still selling through essential businesses. So if you think about mass, that's still open, right? Mass typically makes up about 35% of our sales for office supplies. E-commerce is another, it's typically about 15%. So obviously consumers are still ordering, right, the supplies that they need online. You also have office supply stores. So you're talking Staples and Office Depot. These were designated as essential businesses. So these stores are still open. You also have dollar stores. So dollar stores are still open. These make up about anywhere from 5 to 10% of sales as well. Some craft stores have stayed open. So they also do a good portion of industry sales. And then you've got food and drug. So food and drug sales are also still, they're designated as essential businesses and they're open. So unlike some of the other industries that have seen a lot of retail closures as a result, our industry, the bulk of the sales are happening in stores that have still been designated as essential business. Now, the flip side of that, right, is that are consumers actually still going to stores? And when they do, are they buying supplies? And I think that's the part that we're watching in the data and seeing how it's changing. When, like you said, so at the beginning, when there was sort of a panic, we saw industry sales, which we track with some of these essentials, like janitorial and break room products. So you're talking about bathroom tissue, paper towels, hand sanitizer, hand soap. When you included those in our industry view and our point of sale tracking service, so we have a weekly point of sale tracking service, and in that, janitorial and break room is part of our 13 different category groups that we track. Sales were trending upwards of like 83% growth year over year. I mean, it was incredible. If you remove some of those essentials or prevention products that consumers were buying, sales were, so industry, we're talking stationary sales, industry sales were closer to about flat to 2% growth or 2% decline. That's about where it was sitting. Then, like you said, once everyone started to sort of, they've stockpiled, they feel like they have everything they need, they have the food they need, they have the toilet paper, the paper towels, everything that they could use for the next year, then, you know, we're seeing that growth rate kind of lessen now. So with those products included, it's trending now at about 30% growth as opposed to that like 80, 90 that we were seeing for the industry. And last week we were flat when you remove those prevention products. So you're talking pure stationary sales. We were about flat. This week, the industry is actually down about 9%. And I think that is a result of what I said earlier around the stores might still be open. They're still designated as essential business, but are consumers making the same number of trips? Are they spending as much time in the store as they did before? And then with businesses being closed, do we need the same amount of output in terms of supplies right now, right? So all these things considered, that's where we're at this
Gotcha.
point.
And I thought it was, with e-commerce, question I had is, I know some sites were, for a time anyway, like if you ordered one of the staples, you know, toilet paper or hand sanitizer or food, if they had it in stock, they were shipping that right away. However, if you were looking to order, like I was looking to order a light for my computer, since we're doing all of these Zoom meetings now, and I wouldn't get it. It's like till April 20th, April 25th, because it was a non-essential product. So are you seeing that with the e-com, that, you know, they're just delaying the shipping of things that are not crucial for living?
Yes, and depending on the category, yeah, we have seen some of that. And in some cases, there's even verbiage under an item that will explain. So you don't even have to wait to get to checkout. It might even say that for the time, it'll give you direction on what's happening with that product. So yeah, we are seeing that.
And that's what happened to me. And I just didn't even bother, because I figured I'll look around somewhere else and find somebody that has it, because it might not be an e-commerce retailer, but if I go to a brand website, they may be able to ship it to me direct within a week.
So that's what we're kind of seeing in the industry, right? We're seeing a shift in channels. So for example, drug and food, typically for us, year over year, it's declining anywhere from 5 to 10%. We don't usually see growth within drug and food as channels overall. All of a sudden now, drug and food are seeing growth week to week. I think we saw about a 23% growth within food for office supply sales this past week, and drug last week was growing at about 6 to 7%. So what I believe is happening is there's a couple different forms of convenience, right, that consumers are looking for, but they also want safety. So if I'm going to go out and do a shopping trip, I want to go to one place, and I want to be able to get everything that I can in that one trip, because that way I'm reducing the risk, right, of exposure, and I'm practicing the social distancing. They're also, going to be watching and looking at what retailers are doing to mitigate the risks within the store. So we've seen retailers do all sorts of things like reduce the hours, create one-way aisles so that there isn't like a cross flow of traffic. They're also limiting the number of people that can go in and out. All of that can also impact how much sales you can do in a day, right, at a retailer. So, but the shift we've been seeing has primarily been shift over to food, a shift over to drug. We've seen a shift to e-commerce, and then pretty soon we've got some data coming out where we'd be able to actually look at the shift within retailers. So that should be out within the next few weeks. So we'll have a better read on that.
That'll be interesting. I'm also curious to know if the size of the store makes a difference. I mean, here's why. In my neighborhood, right, I'm in Queens, New York, I have a lot of different stores close by. I have a major drug chain 2 blocks away. I have 3 smaller drug chains within 3 blocks, and then 3 grocery stores, full size, and then a bunch of markets. So when I went to get something at the grocery store, I saw the line outside. I just went over to like the little organic market and bought some stuff, what I was looking for there. I didn't even care that it was going to be more expensive. There was less people in there, and I could get in and out quick. And if they had some non-foods or school supply things that I needed, office supply, I would get it there too. Are you seeing that?
100%. So the other factor that I didn't talk about earlier is, so think about where the density is greatest, right, in the urban areas. That's where we're seeing some of the greatest rate of spread, right, within the areas. And if that's happening, what is the likelihood that someone is going to be taking public transit and other sort of like public commuting options that they might normally take to get to a specific retailer? So would I opt for something that's a lot more convenient locally next to me, like a drug or like a grocery or like a local nature store, to pick up the things that I need, versus hopping on the train and then possibly going to, something that's a little bit more harder to get to for me and puts me at greater risk, or puts my family at greater risk. So I think that's the decision-making process for someone living in an urban area versus someone that might be living in a little more open suburban or rural area. They might be making very different decisions about where they choose to shop. So looking at the data on like a DMA level, a regional basis, which we're also, so that's there's some data also coming out for that in about 2 weeks. So we'll be looking at that as well to kind of see what has been the impact if you were to look at a primarily urban area versus a more infected suburban or rural area, and how's the decision-making process different. It's really kind of interesting.
Oh, well, that's cool. I'll have to follow up with you on that. The other thing is, what about, when you're dealing with brands, I know on the food side, brand loyalty went out the window, because it's like, whatever's there, I'm going to get. If they have macaroni and cheese, A is out, I'll get B or C. I don't care. I just want some. It's probably not as much of a rush on school and office supplies, but there is a sense of that just in general. And I know that if I needed something, I would just get it, whatever was available, wherever is closest to me, most convenient. Are you seeing that as well?
I am. And, traditionally in office supplies, brands tend to have a higher share online. This is primarily due to, when you compare the brands to the private label brands, they tend to have a higher share online. And the reason for that is due to things like search optimization and the different algorithm that allows them to roll up to the, top spot. You also have consumer attention span. So how far down will they scroll versus when you're in a store, you've got more of like a compare and save type of program, right? You see the branded option and the store brand option, and it's a very quick choice between the price points, and you're making the decision based on a couple different factors. Whereas online, there's a little bit more of a control in terms of like what's rolling up to the top. So I think that as you see the shift continue to online right now, as where consumers are buying their school from home products, their art and craft products, you might see a shift towards the branded products. However, that's a good question, and maybe the next time we talk, I can take a look at that, and we'll get into a little bit more of what's happening with brands and what's happening with private label performance.
Excellent. Well, what about the major categories, right? In your data, you talk about things for COVID-19 prevention, small and medium business products, classroom and teacher, home office and Wi-Fi. Can you walk us through those and how that's being impacted, and where do you see it changing?
Sure. So let's start with I'll go a little bit, we'll go back a little bit of what we saw in the first few weeks, and then we'll talk about what we're seeing now. So,
exactly, yeah.
Okay. We had the prevention products, right? So a lot of that janitorial and break room products really driving that growth. Also, there was a point in time where, large corporations moved their employees to a work from home basis, like you, like me, and at scale. You also saw universities closing and asking their students to either not return from spring break or to leave campus and head home. So in those initial weeks, a lot of I would call them productivity tools that we would track in supplies. That's a little different than what we would call productivity in tech. Mm-hmm. But things like your pens, mechanical pencils for an older student, notebooks, so spiral notebooks, these types of things, the things you would use to write, take notes, highlighters. These were all posting growth in the early weeks as some of the more professional work from home population transitioned, and then also your older students transitioned. Once they've become settled, right, their mindset shifts to, okay, well, how do I entertain myself now? What are some of the hobbies I want to do? And then if I'm a parent and I have a co-parent that's also working, how do we make sure our children are occupied while the virtual and e-learning environment gets set up by the school district, as the schools all started to close after that? So I think that first initial wave, you saw some work from home professional and older student specific product categories sort of tick up. You also saw some growth within things like filing and storage. So people wanting to find a way to organize all these things within their home, the products for organization. So those went up. After that, and they've settled, schools have closed, the children have come home. Now it's, how do I stay occupied? How do I have fun? And what are the school list products that I need so that my kids can effectively participate in some sort of school from home program? And so once that happened, we've been seeing things like 60 to 65% growth within category groups like coloring and art. We've seen triple digit growth in some of the writing instruments categories. So things like color markers, window glass markers, all these different things. So, and I could talk more about that once we get into it, but that's sort of been the phases that I've seen in supplies. I've also categorized the different sort of behaviors or lifestyles so that we're tracking within our team. So one is you've got your school from home. So how are you going to effectively conduct school from home? Second is watching the shift to virtual learning and what's its impact on that to supply sales. So as we go more digital, what does that do essentially to supply sales down the line? What is it going to do to supply sales during the back to school season? So that's all things that we're doing current desk research on right now. And we're looking at some studies. Work from home is the other one that we're looking at. So the work from home group, you've got kids play. Some supplies are being used for medical gear. And then you also have your mental health. So how are consumers coping? What are they doing? Journaling, painting, these kinds of things.
Oh, interesting. Because some of those, if you have a family, like I have a twin brother, right? So he has a 17-year-old who's home from college now, but then he's got a 15-year-old, I think a 10-year-old, so 3 different stages of learning of products, and then also just 3 different stages of kids boredom, like the older one might read a book, the younger one needs some arts and crafts or something, so it's just a different dynamic, the way each one's got to be kept occupied. Plus my brother, he normally works from home like me, so he's adapting to that too. And a lot of these people that are new or working from home, like on our marketing team, they have makeshift offices.
Yes.
So they're slapping stuff together, maybe a folding table, and so that's
I saw somebody that was using a upside down laundry hamper. They put it on, I don't even know, to make a standing desk. So
yep. Whatever you got to do. But I'm sure like those organizational products are really important for them. But so they started, so there was a little initial wave when they first started staying home, then it slowed down. Now they're looking for like when I wrote about it, the lifestyle related kind of what's going to make my life easier here. And within those categories, what are you seeing happen? What are there any that are more favorites than others? Do more people paint or is scrapbooking back and all that?
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this for like 2 hours. It's so interesting, but I won't. So
feel free.
I'll agree with it. But here's what I believe. I believe consumers need to do some sort of mental health coping, right? So we're seeing activities related to that. We're also seeing like community connection activities. So how can you connect with your community, but through social distancing and maintaining sort of that practice? So we're seeing activities related to that, and I'll talk about what those are. And then you're also seeing, how do I occupy my children? How do I make sure that they're sort of staying busy, having fun, being stimulated, and and what are the supplies that support that? Mm-hmm. So I'll start with some of the community connection. There was one really cool sort of global trend. Julie Lynette talked about it from Toys 2. It was this rainbow scavenger hunt. So people from all sorts of homes and neighborhoods and businesses were making any sort of rainbow. You could make it out of construction paper. You could paint it on your window using window markers, which were growing like 300% last week. You could take chalk and create the rainbow with chalk on your driveway. So the idea is that you could walk around the neighborhood, because everyone's doing their quarantine walk now, right? You walk around the neighborhood and you can find these rainbows, and it's sort of like a scavenger hunt, and you can do that with your parents or your sister or your brother, and it makes it fun. Some people are also pin dropping when they find a rainbow, so that you can sort of track where someone else might have seen a rainbow and then go to that section and see if you can find it too. So they sort of connect with each other. Another community-based sort of activity is kindness messages and acts of kindness. So thank you cards, thank you cards. Some people leave that on their door for like the delivery drivers. Others are sending letters to the elderly within their homes. I've also heard of some people writing letters to patients in the ICU just to help them know that they care about them. So just different acts of kindness. Chalk messages left on the street or in driveways is another form. A third community connection is the car ride celebrations. So I'll give an example from my hometown. My old elementary school, 60 teachers got together. They all rode in different cars, and they drove around the neighborhoods to say hi to all the students. The students knew this was going to happen. They came out of their homes. They waited for the teachers to come by, and some people made signs. But it's just a way to connect while still keeping that social distance. Another thing the car ride celebration is being used for is birthdays. So it's someone's birthday, you can make them a sign. Poster board sales are through the roof right now at food and grocery stores. So I think that's where everyone's buying their posters. But you can make a happy birthday poster and hold it outside of the car. Some people are doing they're drawing on their car, so the car paint. They'll write happy birthday so-and-so and, draw a cake or balloons on the cars. It's just a way to kind of make someone feel special, make someone feel good in a time where they can't be with the people that they want to be with on a special day, right?
Those are really interesting things. I mean, I see some of them happening and all, different uses of chalk and I think this poses a lot, and there's something we'll get into a little bit later too, but there's a lot of opportunities for retailers and brands to engage the consumer on a much more deeper or stronger level by messaging them like in their content around these things rather than trying to sell them products. And I did a whole podcast with somebody about this topic, but creating content in the context of what's going on. So putting together a package for that car ride celebration thing, where it's got your poster board and your markers and everything you would need to hold one of them, and just giving guidelines on how to do it, or putting together some messaging about, the rainbow thing, and maybe even hosting some, so it's almost kind of like bringing one of those virtual happy hours, but to this kind of category in a way that works with the consumers.
100%. I mean, we've seen, so a good compliment, another one is the stained, so there's this new trend with stained glass sidewalk chalk art, and you're using painter's tape, right, to make sort of like a contemporary art piece with the paint, and then you can color within the lines of the stained glass that you've created through the painter's tape with different chalk colors. Then you remove the tape, and the end is you have this really gorgeous piece of stained glass on your driveway, as an example. So that's a good compliment right there to know that if they're looking for activities and they can click on a specific activity, the products that they need for that are there right away. That also goes with things like trends that we saw before. So slime is coming back. We've seen glue sales tick up. Yep. Back up online. We've also seen adult coloring come back. So sales of adult coloring books and family coloring books are back up off of our BookScan data. So and that's leading to sales within colored pencil sets. So I think that we're also, just like you said, finding these complements and allowing consumers to see, hey, here's what's happening, here are the trends, here are some cool things that you can do while you're at home on your own or with your family. The other one that I'm actually also participating in is so Course Horse and Yaymaker. Yaymaker is sort of the new paint night. You can do it virtually. So they'll do the same wine and paint night that you could take locally in your neighborhood. Now you can do it online with your friends. So you can all sign up for the virtual class. You have to order the painting products online, and that's actually, those are some of the high growth, the highest growth categories for us is all the painting products right now. So people are taking these painting classes, and the other one, Course Horse. Course Horse is offering painting. They're offering mixology classes. They're offering all sorts of things. I mean, there's these, and I've signed up for these, and that's kind of how I'm trying to stay connected. So yeah.
I just did one. In fact, the podcast interview I posted this morning was about a bar in Asbury Park, New Jersey. It's a restaurant group that has 3 restaurants, and they're doing virtual happy hour cocktail lessons. So they're filming it in the bar. It's a live interactive.
Mhm.
There's a fee, and all of the proceeds are going towards the bar staff
Oh,
who
wow.
is currently not working, you know.
That's
So
awesome. That's really
yes,
cool. Yeah.
and they got 110 to 130 people every Saturday evening.
I'm taking a mixology class this Saturday. I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
There you go. And that's the thing is, and you know, I think a lot of these things are going to carry over in some way, shape, or form
100%.
down the road. You know, some of them, you know, maybe not the car thing, or maybe you know, you never know. There's going to be elements that stick together. I think it's forcing us to find innovative ways of making those connections.
Mhm.
And everyone's doing virtual happy hours. I mean, you know, in the ECRM organization, right? We have all the different teams: GM team, grocery team, retail team, and they all happen to be doing their own virtual happy hours. Except I cut across teams, so I get to, you know, jump from one to the other,
Hey,
which
that's
is
fun. That's a good way to
cool.
spend the night.
Yeah, right. And the only thing is, I run out of wine. I have to go get some more wine now around the corner. But and then you're seeing also businesses are getting involved in some of these things. I'm seeing there's a couple of restaurants in my neighborhood that are drawing and having customers draw different things on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant
Yeah.
every day,
Yep.
and everyone's trying to contribute to it.
Yep.
So it's pretty cool, and you know, I think in a way it's making people a little bit closer.
Mhm.
I think it's going to revive some of these things, like you said. I think the adult coloring books was so huge at one point; they kind of died out. This will probably revive them again
Yes.
in a big way. And journaling, I mean, I always kept a journal. I mean, I was a journalist most of my career, but I just out of habit, every morning I would write a couple of pages before journaling became a thing.
Mhm.
And so it's good to see more people doing that. The slime thing is cool.
It is. It is. I can't believe it's coming back. That's awesome. And it's both, right? You have the ones that come in a kit, and you've got the DIY. So that making it from scratch is coming back. The other thing I think that's important for me to mention is like the traditional school list categories. You know, we expected to see a bump in some of that, but it did happen. So you saw some of these like loose filler paper are back up, crayons. There's a bunch, color markers. I wrote them down here, so I've got my little cheat sheet. Chalkboards are up, combo boards. So a lot of the things you might need to teach the child something or go through lessons, those are all up too. And then journaling, it's, you know, for an older student or for a professional, 100%. But surprisingly, a lot of teachers I heard are also asking the younger students to journal so that they could talk about, you know, like release their feelings, talk about their feelings as all these changes are happening to them. And they're trying to understand what's happening and why life has changed so much. So,
Yeah. And I think one thing that this whole situation is going to drive is digital engagement, because all the platforms have seen a super huge spike in activity. And now any brands who weren't doing digital well before this are really getting hurt, because the ones that do a good job and are engaged, they're just right. They're already coming up with cool solutions and really content that's going to help people during this time.
Yeah.
So do you see, I think consumers are more willing to spend time researching things than they have in the past. You know, ingredients or, well, you know, types of different school supplies, types of different artist supplies. They have a lot more time. And especially if the people who have been laid off, you know, they have a lot more time to kind of really dig down and find out exactly what they want and explore a little bit. And I think they're more receptive to good content because they're online all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think, you know, that's something that's going to be really important to watch as we get closer to back to school. So we are looking at these trends. We're also going to be looking at measuring the impact that could have on the back to school season. So that sort of content, what needs to be out there, how does it need to be delivered, the communication, because it's going to be a really dynamic season based on everything that's going on. We have a webinar in May to start the conversation. There to just start talking about what we expect, what are some of the considerations that need to happen, and then as the shift has been more digital and it's moved online, it's become more, what does that do to students' needs and consumers' consumption of supplies related to that? So I think that's a really interesting topic. And let us find, we should probably dive in.
Yeah. No, we'll do a follow-up. So your thoughts, well, one more question and then we'll get into the final thoughts and, what's ahead. Finger paints. What's the deal with finger paints? They're like blowing up.
I think that has a lot to do with keeping kids busy at home. Yeah. Part of that is also these different trends that I've talked about. But that's my hunch is. I think it has to do with a lot of how do you keep the kids busy? How do you create different artwork?
Because I saw on the data that you sent me, of all of those, finger paints was the most, indexed the highest. And after that was, other paints and then construction paper, watercolor paper. So that kids thing is going to really push a lot of that. So going forward over the next few weeks, just your opinion, where do you see the category going? How do you see it moving?
I definitely can give some thoughts on that, but
what do you have coming
really
up?
Hard to predict. Yeah, it is really hard to predict. But I could see these categories continuing to grow for a little while. We are trying to look at the data in a way to see if consumers are pantry loading in any way on any of these supplies. So if I have enough crayons and colored markers and finger paints, do I need more in a month? So will there be a little bit of a plateau at some point or a lull in the sales and then a pickup? So I think that's kind of one of the things that we're trying to look into now is understanding, is this going to be a continuous sales cycle? So I consistently need new art supplies and products and ideas. And that goes back to what you mentioned is there an opportunity for brands to continually connect with the consumer, helping them support the ideas that they have right now in terms of how they're using these products and consuming them, but then also new ideas. What else could you do? So once you feel very satiated with some of the current activities and trends that are happening, what's next? And then what are the supplies that are going to kind of support that? So I think that's a very important consideration, that brands and retailers have to stay so connected with the consumer right now to make sure that they're giving them various options and how to stay creative and how to stay stimulated, stay busy while they're at home. So
I think that's the number one thing that they should really pay attention to is listen to them and what their needs are and just suggest things that they could do, because they're dying to figure out new things to do. They have all this time home, and especially someone who's laid off that's got kids, they're going to really want to fill the time. So that's probably the best advice that you could give them. So
100%. Well, if you hear anything else about the finger paints, let me know, because I don't know.
I will. No, I will. It's just, I know I'm hearing a lot about that and Legos, actually. Yeah. Legos are big, and I just, one of my colleagues sent me a picture of just the floor with just batches of Legos and different tools.
Legos are fun. You can create an entire city right in your own home.
They can keep you really busy. So, and what do you have coming up reporting-wise that you could, let everybody know to keep out for? Because you mentioned you have several reports coming up.
We do. So we send out a few different reports. One is the economic virus report that's sent from our top advisors, Don Unser, who's the head of our retail group, and then Marshall Cohen, who's our chief analyst, work on that report along with our set of industry advisors. So that's going out on a weekly basis. I'm part of the tech sector, so under Ian Hamilton, we have a weekly report that's also going out. It talks about technology sales on a global level, and that includes what's happening in office supplies. And then for our office supplies client base, there's an additional third report that I put together that gets sent out to our account managers, and then that in turn gets relayed over to our clients. So if there's anyone that's interested about the insights, what we're seeing, what are some of the different ways they could be connecting with consumers and taking advantage of the trends that are happening, please reach out to us. We'd love to help and get you some of these insights so that you know where to play.
Excellent. Well, it was great talking to you again. Hopefully next time, next time we'll probably do it digitally again, but ultimately we'll be in person again. So thank you for all those insights and for your time.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Anytime.
Yes, we're going to do this again. We'll do a new update as soon as you get the data.
Okay, you got it.
All right. Stay safe.
You too. Bye.